never thought I would be the kind of woman to sit down and tell a story like this. My life had always looked perfect from the outside. I had a husband who was hardworking, responsible, and respected by everyone around him. People admired us as a couple, the ones who had it all figured out. And yet, behind the doors of our home, the silence between us grew louder every day. What started as small gaps became walls I could not climb over. He was always busy, always tired, and always somewhere else even when he sat across from me at dinner. I kept asking myself if this was what marriage was supposed to feel like after a few years, or if maybe I was the problem. In the early days, we laughed together, shared secrets late at night, and touched each other like we were afraid the world would tear us apart. But slowly, those moments faded. He buried himself in work, chasing promotions and money, while I buried myself in routine. I would try to tell him how I felt, and he would nod absently, eyes glued to his phone, murmuring that things would get better. But they didn't. And with every ignored word, I felt a piece of me slipping away. I became someone I didn't even recognize. Quiet, hollow, longing for something I couldn't even name. I started noticing little things. The way he left home without kissing me goodbye. The way he turned his back in bed before I could even whisper goodnight. The way I dressed up for him sometimes, only to have him glance once and return to his laptop. I told myself not to expect too much, that marriages go through phases, that love matures into something calmer. But deep inside, I craved affection, attention, and the simple warmth of being seen. I wanted someone to look at me as if I mattered, as if I was more than just part of the furniture in his busy life. One weekend, we had planned to go to the beach together, something I had been looking forward to for weeks. I imagined walking hand in hand, laughing like we used to, maybe even rekindling some spark. But on the morning we were supposed to leave, he told me he had to cancel. His office needed him again. The same office that seemed to claim every part of him I once had. He suggested I go alone if I wanted, said it might be good for me to relax. His voice was casual, almost dismissive, as if it didn't matter whether I stayed or left. So, I packed a small bag and drove to the coast by myself. The road stretched endlessly, and with each mile, I felt the weight of my loneliness pressing harder. I wondered if he even noticed I was gone, or if I was just another detail in his crowded schedule. By the time I reached the beach, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The air smelled of salt, the sound of the waves rose and fell like a heartbeat, and for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of freedom. Walking barefoot on the sand, I tried to breathe it all in, to remind myself that I was still alive, still capable of feeling something. The sea breeze tangled in my hair, the water kissed my toes, and the horizon seemed endless, like a promise of something new. But even in that beauty, a hollow ache lingered inside me. I wanted someone beside me, someone who could share this moment, someone who would see me not as an obligation, but as a person worth holding close. I stood there watching the waves, unaware that the next hours on that beach would change the course of everything I thought I knew about myself, my marriage, and love itself. He appeared as if out of nowhere, a figure walking along the shoreline with a calmness that immediately caught my attention. I hadn't come to the beach looking for company, but when his eyes met mine, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, acknowledgement. He gave me a small smile, not too forward, just enough to feel warm. I almost looked away, but he slowed down as he reached where I stood, and with a voice low and steady, he asked if I was okay. For a moment, I hesitated. Strangers didn't usually ask questions like that, not with such genuine curiosity. Something inside me cracked open, and I found myself nodding, even though the truth was written all over my face. Our words started simple, as though we were testing the air between us. He asked if I lived nearby. I told him I had come for a small escape. When he asked if I was alone, I admitted I was. Saying it out loud hurt more than I expected. There was no judgment in his expression, no pity either. Just a kind of interest that made me feel less invisible. The conversation, meant to stay light, turned into something deeper without me realizing. I told him about the long drives I used to love, the books I read to keep myself from feeling too empty, the way the world seemed quieter than I wanted it to be. He listened like every word mattered. My husband hadn't looked at me like that in years. As we walked along the shore, I became aware of how close our footsteps fell. Sometimes our shoulders brushed, and each accidental touch left me breathless in a way that startled me. I knew I should keep my distance, remind myself that I was married, that I had made vows, but the more he spoke, the more I felt drawn into a space where I didn't have to pretend. He asked questions no one else bothered to ask anymore. What I dreamed about, what I feared, what made me feel alive. And with each answer I gave, I realized how much of myself I had been hiding away. There was an ease in his presence, like he carried no demands, only curiosity. I noticed small details, the way he looked out at the horizon before speaking, the way his laughter blended with the sound of waves, the steadiness in his voice when he told me about the places he had traveled. I was mesmerized, not just by him, but by the way he made me feel, present, seen, unforgotten. I hadn't expected to meet anyone, yet here I was, walking beside a stranger who felt less like a stranger with every passing minute. The sun sank lower, the sky now burning with streaks of crimson and purple. The air grew cooler, but the silence between us warmed me more than words could. He didn't push, didn't ask for anything, yet there was a current between us I couldn't deny. Each glance lasted a second too long, each pause felt heavy with something unsaid. I told myself it was just the atmosphere, just loneliness playing tricks on me. But when our eyes met again, something deep inside whispered that this was more than chance. I should have turned away, but I didn't. And that choice, that quiet surrender, was the beginning of everything that followed. We sat down on the cool sand, the sound of the waves filling the spaces between our words. I hadn't planned on saying much more, but the stillness around us made it easy to let things slip. I found myself confessing how distant my marriage had become, how I felt like I was living with a shadow instead of a partner. The more I spoke, the more I realized how much I had bottled up. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer clichés or quick solutions. He just listened, and that alone felt like a gift I had been starving for. At some point, a tear escaped before I could stop it. I turned away, embarrassed, but he reached out and brushed it gently from my cheek. That simple gesture, so small, so human, broke down walls I had built for years. I should have pulled back, should have reminded myself who I was and what promises I had made. But his touch was warm, grounding, and I leaned into it as though it had been waiting for me all along. The night grew darker, the stars beginning to scatter across the sky, and with each passing moment the air between us thickened with unspoken tension. His hand lingered against mine, fingers brushing until they finally intertwined. My heart raced in a way I hadn't felt since the first time I fell in love, and I hated myself for how much I wanted it. Every part of me screamed that this was wrong, that it was betrayal, but another part whispered that it was the first time in years I felt alive. Then it happened. He leaned in, slowly, almost as if giving me time to stop him. I didn't. His lips touched mine softly at first, tentative, questioning. The world around us seemed to vanish, the waves crashing, the night air, everything fading until there was only the electricity of that kiss. I knew I should have pulled away, but instead I surrendered, deepening it, feeling the rush of passion surge through me like a storm I had been waiting for all my life. For a few endless moments, nothing else mattered. Not the vows I had taken, not the ring on my finger, not the man waiting at home. There was only the intensity of desire and the aching relief of finally being wanted. My body betrayed me, clinging to him as if he was the answer to every question I had carried in silence. But then, as suddenly as it began, reality crashed in. I pulled back, breathless, my heart pounding with both exhilaration and shame. His eyes searched mine, not demanding, not apologizing, just steady, as if he understood the chaos I was drowning in. I turned away, staring at the endless horizon, guilt already clawing at me. I had crossed a line, one I could never uncross. The taste of him lingered on my lips, a reminder of the weakness I could never take back. That night, on that beach, I became someone I never thought I'd be. The morning light felt different, harsher somehow, as though the sun itself wanted to remind me of what I had done. I woke with the taste of regret heavy in my chest, the echo of that kiss still alive on my lips. The waves no longer sounded soothing. They roared like accusations. The freedom I thought I had found the night before had already twisted into something else, a weight I couldn't carry without trembling. I sat there on the shore for a long time, staring at the endless water, trying to convince myself that it had been a fleeting mistake, a moment of weakness that could be buried in the sand forever. But I knew better. Once a line is crossed, there's no returning to innocence. Driving back home, my thoughts spun like a storm. Every mile closer to my house filled me with dread. I tried rehearsing what I might say if I ever confessed, but the words tangled in my throat. How could I look into my husband's eyes, knowing I had betrayed him in the most intimate way? And yet, how could I pretend nothing had happened, when inside me everything had shifted? The guilt was sharp, but alongside it was something else, an unsettling clarity. I had tasted what it felt like to be wanted again, to be seen, and no matter how wrong it was, I couldn't unfeel it. When I walked through the front door, my husband barely looked up from his laptop. He asked if I had enjoyed the trip, his tone polite, detached, as though I had gone to the store and back. I forced a smile, nodded, and told him it was fine. The lie slipped out too easily, but beneath it, my heart ached. Every casual glance, every ignored touch, every distracted word now carried the sting of the secret I was hiding. Sitting across from him at dinner, I wanted to scream, to confess everything, to demand that he see me for once. Instead, I ate in silence, my thoughts louder than the clinking of cutlery. At night, lying beside him, I stared at the ceiling while he fell asleep within minutes, his back turned to me as always. I wondered if he would ever know the truth, if I would ever have the courage to tell him, or if this would remain my private burden forever. I thought of the stranger on the beach, his voice, his touch, the way he looked at me as if I mattered. It haunted me, not just because it was wrong, but because it awakened a part of me I thought had died long ago. In the days that followed, I walked through life as if nothing had happened, but inside I was different. I carried guilt like a shadow, yet I also carried a dangerous hunger I couldn't ignore. I didn't know what the future of my marriage would be, or whether it could survive what I had done, even if the truth never surfaced. What I knew was this: that night on the beach had changed me. It showed me what I was missing, what I had been starving for, and what choices can do when loneliness becomes too heavy to bear. I had found something and lost something all at once, and the person who left that beach was no longer the same woman who arrived.